Hi, it's Nutrition with Burr here, and this video it may be a little bit longer than I would normally do. It's on the Netflix documentary series, The Omnivore versus the Vegan Diet, which you can find on Netflix. It's a series, I think there are 4 of them or 5, and it's the cardiometabolic effects of the 2 diets and which one of them fares best. They use identical twins. There are 22 pairs. It ends up at the end of the story, it's only 21 pairs. It's a really interesting documentary, but I put off watching it because I really was afraid of the vegan propaganda that would be put upon us, and it is very much that way, sadly, and it very much highlights the use of ultra processed foods in my mind, and the use of the beyond meat products. There is no real talk, I don't believe, around health, even though you might think there is. But from my perspective as a nutritionist, it doesn't talk about ultra processed foods. It doesn't talk about industrial seed oils. It doesn't talk about whole foods, really. I mean, because the foods that they give the subjects for the actual trial are prepackaged foods, which is fine, but there were some fake, for sure, fake chicken, which emulated real chicken, which would be like the Beyond Meat products. I'm not 100% sure of the details of those foods, but I think it's sad that it didn't use the opportunity to really look at how we can unite, whether we're animal-based or plant-based, and how we can deal with the crisis of metabolic disease and obesity, cancer, and also the global warming crisis that we're facing. And we really need to do, we really need to change our food practices and our farming practices. And I think this could have been a much more productive show if it had done something on those lines, rather than creating a further divide between animal-based and plant-based. We should be looking at the benefits of both. And if you choose to eat an omnivorous diet, or whether you choose to eat a vegan diet, we will support that, but this is how you do it. Though it didn't discuss any of those things, it didn't actually tell the participants who are vegans how to optimize protein, how to optimize micronutrients that might be deficient in a vegan diet, or that are deficient in a vegan diet, like vitamin D, vitamin B12, iron. Those are micronutrients which are known to be deficient in a vegan diet. And there was no talk about supplementation and the necessary need to supplement vitamin B12 when eating a diet of that style. Now, I'm doing this as a slideshow, so I've gone to a little bit of trouble because I felt quite strongly about it. So I hope this recording works and it comes out and you can understand what I'm saying. So this is the chicken style food. It's a Beyond Burger product. It's got lots of ingredients, wheat gluten, fava beans, rapeseed oil, sunflower seed oil, and lots of others. And then I've highlighted some of those further down that we'll discuss. The reason I highlighted this because they actually honed in about saturated fat, how detrimental that was for our health. But those of us who have looked into the research actually, have the knowledge to know that actually saturated fat isn't the cause of heart disease. It's the oxidized LDLs from ultra processed seed oils that is actually a huge problem for arteriosclerosis, which is plaque in the arteries. So the fat content of this 100-gram Faco chicken was 13 grams, and the saturated fat was 1.8. Now, I looked at a chicken breast of a similar size, and obviously it depends where you look, whether you're using Chronometer or MyFitnessPal. The actual fat content is between 5 and 6 grams total, and of the similar size and weight. and the saturated fat is actually between 1.5 and 1.7, so less. But the more important thing is there is none of this processed junk in a chicken breast. And obviously, if it's organic and raised in the outdoors, then you're getting a much better product. I'm not promoting chicken. I chose chicken because chicken was actually used quite a bit as the food for the omnivores, or turkey was even mentioned, which is kind of funny because that was one of the meals. I was thinking, well, I never eat turkey. I didn't even eat turkey for Christmas, and I don't eat chicken that much. So it was funny that those were the actual foods, because they said healthier omnivore options were the white meats, but clearly the red meat is so toxic that you couldn't include it in your diet. So I went through some of these ingredients, and I just wanted to explain to you what they were and why we should stay clear of them. And again, they're ultra processed foods, and ultra processed foods is linked to an imbalance in the gut microbiome, and dysbiotic gut, so it creates an imbalance. It's also linked to many conditions like autoimmune conditions. They're linked to migraines, allergies, the list goes on and on. But the Western Price Foundation, which is a great foundation, they do a lot of research and they're very factual. And I don't believe that they misrepresent the facts. So they have a great paper on the modified cornstarch, and they've done all the research. And that's a carbohydrate. The modified cornstarch is not modified as in a GMO, but it's modified in that it's changed from its original state by heating and washing and doing lots of different things to it, so that it actually can be then used as a filler in foods. So it's a carbohydrate derived from corn, potatoes, wheat, tapioca, rice, those kind of grains. And then it's been used in infant formula, which is kind of scary. And they have seen positive hydrogen breath tests when they have tested infants who have been fed this. And they've also experienced diarrhea. Now, hydrogen producing bacteria, one of the side effects is that it causes diarrhea. And my problem with this is at such a very young age, these little infants are not getting a choice. They're not making a choice. So they're dependent on us, the parents, to make an informed decision. And really, you need to be looking to see if this modified starch is in the formula. You really need to stay clear from it, because it could be the cause of early childhood allergies, early childhood dysbiosis or leaky gut. Again, where I said where the gut lining is inflamed. And then other toxins can actually go into the system and cause autoimmune response in the body. That's quite an in-depth topic, so I could do another video on that at another time if you liked. And then over here, they list, some of the adverse reactions that people have had from the modified cornstarch: diarrhea, migraines, allergies, sore throats, closing of the throat, dizziness. And, we see that in the ENT clinic all the time in the hospital. I'm a nurse, remember? So I work full time and I see many things on a daily basis. And, to my surprise, more and more parents are coming in and their little ones, 2-3 years of age, all on antihistamines. And, that kind of shocks me and saddens me, because when I was growing up, I had never even heard of an antihistamine. I didn't hear of an antihistamine until I was well in my late 20s, 30s. So, we have to start looking at what's causing these problems for our very young. Why are there so many food intolerances? Why are there so many allergies? And this could be part of the problem. Gut and bloating and gas, excuse me. I'm just gonna have a little drink of water. Depression, anger kind of symptoms, so neurological symptoms, foggy brain, change in mood. And depression is one of those conditions now that's soaring. And, even younger people who would never, we'd never thought the younger people, like kids, getting depression, but kids are now getting diagnosed as clinically depressed. Again, we do need to think, what are we feeding our kids? how is that affecting them, their gut microbiome, affecting their brain? And we can change that. And, you know, we can reverse these things with the food that's on our plate. I think I really wanted to highlight the ultra-processed food on this whole video, because there was zero talk about ultra-processed foods on that whole documentary. And I think that's key for health, is removing ultra-processed foods. So it makes up 57% of the UK diet. So over half of our food that we eat is ultra-processed, containing these kind of ingredients. And it is definitely linked to heart disease, stroke, and heart attacks. And that's not hearsay. The research backs that up. So that's something we need to take seriously. So another ingredient was Sodium Phosphate. It's a preservative, flavor enhancer. It's found in foods and cosmetics. Side effects of it are kidney disease, heart disease, edema, and digestive problems. Again, the links to all these papers that I've got these from are below. Methylcellulose, you know, that's a, you think cellulose, oh, that's fine. If you read that in an ingredient list, you think that's not too bad. It's cellulose, you know, it's plant-based food, so you expect to find cellulose. Yes, it's part of the plant cellulose, but this is methylcellulose. Again, it's a man-made, it's chemically modified, and it's actually called, it's an E461. Now, if you saw an E461 on a food ingredient, you probably wouldn't buy it. But if you see methylcellulose, you'd probably buy it because you think that's just cellulose. Again, it has side effects of bloating, gas, and diarrhea, and it interferes with the absorption of nutrients, including iron and calcium. Now, if you're a vegan, you're already having difficulty absorbing certain nutrients like iron, because it's not readily available in vegan food, and B12, because you only can get it on animal-based products, and vitamin D. And then you add in these kind of ingredients, which causes inflammation. But this is not just for the vegans, this is for the omnivores, or anybody eating their diet, that if you're choosing these inflammatory foods and you're causing inflammation in your gut, you will prevent absorption of other nutrients, and those deficiencies have a knock-on effect. So, for example, if I'm deficient in B12, I will have I can have numbness in my hands and my feet, a neuropathy, that's called. I can have neurological symptoms, like I have brain fog, that my recall isn't very good. I forget what I'm going to say. I can walk into doors. You can have symptoms of MS and Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, depression, all symptoms just with B12 deficiencies, many more. You can look it up in the Pernicious Anemia Society. If, for example, I have iron deficiency, I start to lose my hair, I start to lose my mind, I get quite anxious, I can't deal with stressful situations, I can't even deal with normal situations, I can't get out of bed because I've got chronic fatigue. The list goes on and on. So these micronutrients are really important. They play key roles in our body at cell level, and we really need to move away from ultra-processed foods so that we can have maximum absorption in our intestines. Okay, sorry, that was a lot, and I'm out of breath. I have to keep going while I'm on a roll. So the next one here is rapeseed oil and sunflower seed oil. So this is both of these are in the Beyond Meat product, and they're in most of the plant-based foods, and they're in a lot of the omnivore foods, sadly. When I look at, you know, if I wanted to buy a sauce, which now obviously I'm in carnivore, I'm not buying sauces, but even if I'm looking for my husband who likes like a patac sauce, or, you know, one of those sauces, they all have rapeseed and sunflower seed oil in. And this oil is highly oxidized. And this then results in oxidized LDL, chronic low-grade inflammation, and arteriosclerosis. And so even the people who are, you know, like think they're doing super because they're eating carnivore, and they're using mayonnaise, which has got rapeseed oil and sunflower oil, because most of it has, unless you go to one of the very high-end brands, you know, where it's £7 to £12 for a pot of 250 grams of mayonnaise, or you make your own, you'll be getting a lot of these oils. So, you know, you might think you're actually doing yourself lots of benefits by just eating carnivore, and then you're having the mayonnaise, which has got the rapeseed and the sunflower oil. You need to swap that out, stop having it if you're carnivore. And if you're omnivore or vegan, you really need to go for clean sources of these oils. You need to move away from these oils, and, you know, move to extra virgin olive oil and make sure that that's clean, or use butter, tallow, those kind of fats, which are not oxidized and they're much more stable, coconut oil, there are other options for you. So this study was that omega-6 vegetable oils a driver of coronary artery disease that oxidized linoleic acid hypothesis. And that actually ended up by saying is likely a major culprit for causing coronary heart disease due to what I already mentioned, the inflammation and the atherosclerosis and the oxidized LDLs. So, oxidized seed oils, which are vegetable oils, really you need to move those out of your diet if you're after health benefits. Then I just wanted to, bring to attention the net worth of Beyond Meat. I don't need to really say anything, but since 2020 24, you can see it's almost doubled. They funded the whole program, the whole study. So there were some biases, we can say, that it wasn't all about promoting health and longevity and reducing inflammation. Clearly it wasn't. So they had their own agenda here. And it's, comes down to money always at the end of the day. Another ingredient, which that slide just slipped up, sorry, dry yeast, and that increases the shelf life and enhances the overall texture of food. So, palpability is increased, makes you want to eat more. It's not the same, it's not identical to MSG, but it has similar properties to MSG in the fact that it contains something called glutamate, an amino acid, which is a flavor enhancer that can affect how much we eat. It can cause you, like MSG, to overeat and cause food type addictive behaviors. Another side effect of that is it can cause depressive symptoms and obesity. And that's been seen in a paper here in schizophrenia, and the paper is down there. So, again, moving away from processed foods, ultra processed foods, and to just having one or two ingredients, one ingredient ideally, and you're not buying it in a package. So the next thing I want to talk about is TMAO, trimethylene oxide, because they talked about that, and that was one of the things that they saw drop down, like LDL, drop down at the end of the study. I just wanted to highlight that TMAO, it's not just, a one foul sweep, that's all there is to the discussion. It's quite complex. And TMAO is a metabolite which is generated from choline, which is found in eggs, red meat, and fishes got high levels of TMAO. And increase, so it was hypothesized that increased levels of this nutrient, TMAO, is linked to atherosclerosis and coronary artery disease. It's hypothesized. I don't think it's actually ever been really solidly proven. And also it's been taken out of context, because when they've done these studies, they haven't actually removed the processed seed oils. They haven't put them on a low carb, clean diet, or, a low sugar diet. The controls haven't been clear when they've done these studies. But a study was done in the University of Sydney, Heart Research Institute, and they have debunked that whole TMO link to heart disease. They did a study with diet, an unhealthy diet, high in choline, and a high fiber diet. And the results, intriguingly, they did not see any changes in the atherosclerotic burden or plaque composition induced by the high choline diet. So I think the take home from this is that it's all about context. So if you are a smoker, a drinker, you're eating all the processed foods, all those high sugar drinks, the sodas, the Coca-Colas, then you're also having the burgers from McDonald's, and you're having the cakes and, donuts and all that stuff, then obviously you're going to have an increased risk of sclerotic plaque in your arteries and many other conditions. So really, we need to actually change our focus and think, really, what is going on? It's not just about one thing, because TMO has other functions, and we actually, it's oxidized by an enzyme in the liver, FMO3, And also our gut bacteria convert the TMA into TMAO. So if there is also a genetic predisposition, you know, where you can't convert it or whatever, then that also affects the levels of TMO that will be found. And in the Japanese population, who eat a high proportion of fish, they had very high levels of TMAO, but they didn't have coronary artery disease. Now, you could say that's the omega-3s in the fish, but we don't really know. So I think, so this whole argument about TMO being linked to cancer and being linked to heart disease has not been proven, and now actually it's been disproven. So again, it's about context. It's about what else is on your plate. It's about your lifestyle. You know, are you smoking? You're drinking? Do you not get enough sleep? All of those matters play a real role. And then here we have, I really thought, you know, we really need to link the gut and heart axis. That's another axis like the gut-brain axis. You know, the gut has access to all of the organs in the body. And we really need to think whatever's happening in the gut has a negative effect to the rest of our body. So if you've got an inflamed gut causing gas, bloating, diarrhea, constipation, whatever, then that's going to be having a negative effect on your detox pathways, like through the liver, a negative effect on your brain function. It's going to have a negative effect on your heart, your immune system. So this paper was called Bridging the Gap Between Gut Microbiome Dysbiosis and Cardiovascular Disease. Dysbiosis plays a significant role in the development of coronary vascular disease, contributing to the risk factors such as arteriosclerosis, hypertension, which is high blood pressure, and arteriosclerosis is plaque in the arteries, dyslipidemia, so high blood cholesterol, and fibrosis of the arteries, so stiffness of the arteries. That is that paper. So the dysbiotic gut is a big culprit. And then we can add the ultra-processed foods as being maybe the root cause of that, and all those Frankenstein foods. So, you know, it's kind of trying to get that inflammation down in the gut. So the gut microbiome homeostasis is here. So this is the balanced gut, where you've got a nice mix of the weeds and the flowers. That's called the bacteria that. And then this is your dysbiotic gut, where you have too many weeds. So too many of the pathogenic, too many of the negative bacteria that cause inflammation, and then they leak off endotoxins. And then with that gut dysbiosis, you've got a leak in the wall of the gut, where those endotoxins and all those other toxic nutrients can actually, toxic foods can actually enter into the system and cause an autoimmune response where the body attacks itself. So dysbiotic gut can lead to all of the metabolic diseases: gastrointestinal disease, liver disease, obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and chronic illness. So this is a really good reason for you to actually know what is on your plate. Have singular ingredients. Don't have something like a Beyond Meat burger, an Impossible burger, or a hot dog, sausage, for example, for the omnivores. Have a piece of chicken, which is hopefully organic. Have a steak, which is hopefully grass-fed. Have black beans, have chickpeas, have quinoa, have organic rice. You know, I'm just saying singular ingredients, not processed foods. Let's move away from those. So then my next slide is this one: the effects of a vegan diet on Alzheimer's disease. Now, there is no proof that actually eating a vegan diet will prevent Alzheimer's disease. What we do know is that the ultra-processed foods, the high sugar diets, they will promote Alzheimer's disease. And you may have already heard that Alzheimer's disease is also considered type 3 diabetes. So people who are pre-diabetic or type 2 diabetes have a higher risk of getting Alzheimer's disease, no matter what your genetic background is. Vegan diets lack specific vitamins and micronutrients, and we already talked about them: B12, D, and also they have a DHA deficiency from the omega-3s, which is linked to Alzheimer's disease. Now, obviously, there would be a dispute over that, but what I'm trying to say to you, it's not going to protect you from Alzheimer's disease, because you will have some micronutrient deficiencies, which you do need to address. And even if you think, oh, I'm going to supplement with an omega-3, you don't know that that omega-3 oil, which you're going to supplement with, is actually not oxidized. So be very careful and be very mindful. This made me laugh. This is Dr. McGregor. He is we're as sure processed meat causes cancer as we are cigarette smoking causes cancer. No, we're not. This is a very inflammatory remark. He said it to cause a reaction. He said it in such a way that it would cause a reaction. If you wanted to rewind back and see, it actually made me laugh. He is a piece of work, Dr. McGregor. Really, if you take anything from this show, is always double check everything that he actually says, because he doesn't base it on the science at all. So these are 3 papers that I actually looked at on PubMed about cancer and heart disease relating to red meat and processed red meat. And these are fairly recent in the the last 2 or 3 years. Non-communicable disease risk associated with red and processed meat consumption, magnitude, certainty, and contextuality of risk. And it says, regressively, this is the conclusion, the scientific discussion on the potential association between meat and non-communicable diseases is often no longer a transparent assessment. And it is no longer a transparent assessment. And this show is not transparent. They've got their own agenda, they've got their own interests, and they've got their own ideologies. And that's what I would say to you. Please just step back and have a look at what they're trying to promote here. They're not promoting health, because if they were promoting health, as I said, they would be saying to the vegans, you do need to know how to combine your beans with your grains to optimize your amino acid profile. You do need to optimize your micronutrients that you might be deficient in if you're eating this way. So it's key that really, if we're advocating health, we actually, even if we're a proponent of a certain diet, we need to highlight actually the deficiencies of that diet and how we might bridge the gap for those deficiencies, and be very honest and transparent. And in fact, it says the removal of meat from the diet, or reduction of meat from the diet, could result in additional deaths, illness, iron deficiency anemia, sarcopenia, and child and maternal malnutrition. And I would add the B12 deficiency, all of those. The list is very long with those. And red and processed meat causing pancreatic cancer is another meta-analysis here. No relationship between pancreatic cancer and red and processed meat. Again, association of red meat intake and colorectal cancer amongst the Asians, East Asians. Intake of red meat was not associated with increased risk of colorectal cancer in China, Japan, and South Korea. So there you have the kind of the facts, that this is all hyper-inflated. It's alarmist, and the goal is that we'll all be eating lab-based meats, and that we will not be eating any farmed animals. This is not what I was brought up on. I'm brought up on a farm, and this is not how I want to see the future going forward. That, again, that the big fat, certain cooperative, big co-op kind of companies are making all the millions, while the rest of us are getting sick and getting chronic diseases. Now, the next one, then I'll quickly go through these. This is the different types of plant-based milk, because we do know that the impact of dairy milk on the environment is huge, with the emissions from that and the amount of water it takes to feed cows. That's a big issue. But the plant-based milks are lining up and they're filling up the shelves, as well as all the plant-based products, and those are being flown in all over the world, which again has a huge effect on our environment. Almond milk, it takes about a gallon of water to grow 1 almond, and nearly 5 gallons to produce a walnut. To make 2 liters of almond milk, it takes a pound of fresh almonds. Californians' almonds suck as much water annually as Los Angeles uses in 3 years. So I would kind of urge you not to use almond milk as a milk replacement. And the other thing, which is not often talked about, is that almonds are heavily sprayed with glyphosate pre-harvesting the weeds. So again, you know, they have seen when they have looked at examined the almonds, that they were contaminated, even the ones that weren't on the ground, they were on the trees, they were contaminated with glyphosate. Now, glyphosate is another subject on its own, but it does cause many, many serious health conditions, and it has a detrimental effect on your gut microbiome. So for that reason, if you're eating almonds, you should buy organic, and you should move away from almond milk, because it has a lot of negative impacts on the environment as well. Coconut milk is better than almond milk because it doesn't require this the amount of water, but it has led to deforestation, exploitation of workers. So try and buy fair trade coconut milk. Oat milk, which is the one that's used, you know, on now generally in the coffee shops, oat milk is really taking over as the leading brand of plant-based milks. But when the Environmental Working Group, they looked at oat milk and they tested different products containing oats. All products had high levels, high levels of pesticides, the glyphosate, which are heavily sprayed on oats. So oats, and I even think organic oats are questionable whether they have glyphosate in them as well. So oats, you know, are deemed to be this very healthy product, but there's nothing healthy about glyphosate. So again, that's the problem with a lot of our grains. They're heavily sprayed. Wheat, barley, they're all heavily sprayed. I've spoken to the farmers here in Cambridge who I see at the hospital, and I, you know, said to them, oh, how do you manage, you know, for all the pest, you know, the pest controls and all of that? Oh, don't worry, we just blast them all with spray. We spray. And that is one of the reasons I will never eat grains, because I do believe they're all contaminated. They don't agree with me anyway, so my body is very good at rejecting all of these foods, which I'm quite happy about. My immune system just tends to go, boom, kick them out, and lets me know very loud and clear not to eat them. Soy milk and soy products, they have, you know, they use high amounts of water. So after dairy, they're probably the next worst for the environment. Farming causes deforestation of the Amazon rainforest, reduces biodiversity, increases carbon emission. Rice milk is an interesting one, because when little kids are young, and they're being weaned off the breast, they're often put on rice milk. And I know I was guilty of that. When my little girl was not able to tolerate dairy, we used rice milk. And, you know, I didn't know that it was sprayed with over 40 different pesticides to control the weeds back then. So that's, you know, pretty toxic stuff. And it has a high greenhouse gas emission. It uses a large amount of water. It's comparable to almonds. So you really need, if you're eating rice, hopefully you don't buy rice milk, that you actually really need to buy organic. The best of all of these plant-based milks would be hemp. It is the one that's most easily farmed. It doesn't require, you know, huge amounts of water. It's a very environmentally friendly milk. But the problem with hemp, depending on where it's grown, it can have high levels of molds, and that can be very problematic for people's health. So what I would say to you at the end of all this is, really, I would encourage you to kind of think about moving away from actually those plant-based milks, because all of them in general, if you look at them, most of them have, I won't say all, but most of the ones I've looked at, all of the ones I've looked at, so I'm not saying all in the world, but all the ones I've looked at all contain rapeseed oil or sunflower seed oil. And we've already talked about how that is detrimental to our arteries and causes inflammation and is not good for our health. It's an ultra-processed food. So then there was the talk about, you know, the cheese on this show. And the guest, she was a Japanese lady, Mayoki. She had her own line, very clever lady, of vegan cheeses, all made out of what she said was the very environmentally friendly cashews. And I actually have a clip here of the picture. Like, she had like masses and masses of cashew that was being mass produced to make, well, not mass produced, but produced in large quantities to make these vegan cheeses. Now, I had known way back 10, 12, 14 years ago that there was a dark side to cashews, and that the workers in India and Brazil, they actually get burns in their hands from the acid from the nuts. They can wear gloves if they can afford to buy the gloves. Many of them can't afford to buy the gloves, and then they get they get burns in their hands and deformations in their hands, and they sit and for 8-10 hours a day deshelling these fruits to get that one cashew out. The other point about, and so there's a picture here of these, like the Indian lady there working and state of her hands. We really need to think where our food is coming from and what effect it's having on the locals who are actually having to produce this, and they're getting paid like so little for doing this. It's complete exploitation. So we do need to think about fair trade when we're buying products. The fields are also really heavily sprayed with, it's called, the actual spray it's called endosulfan, and that has a huge negative effect on the environment. They're sprayed daily when it comes to that season for killing the weeds and keeping down the bugs, because the cashews get a particular bug on the plant. Bees, butterflies, dragonflies, all decreasing. So all those, all our natural wild species are decreasing as a result of this herbicide and pesticide and herbicide has been used on the cashew plant, but it's also used on tea and cotton. So be really mindful of that. And these are some of the symptoms, headache, sore throat, itchy, nausea, vomiting, sneezing, breathing issues, infections, fever, flu, allergy, diarrhea, metallic taste. But the symptoms are very severe, and some of the farmers are dying from using this pesticide because it's the only way for the crop to be productive. And they have, one of the big things is the neuromuscular paralysis, which in this picture you can see, and it's really, really sad, that this is what's happening in India to these farmers. And obviously the local community are also being affected by it because they're spraying every day. So that's in the air and in the environment. And the number one cause of death, apart from accidents in the agricultural community, is this is the number one cause of death. So that's really shocking. And so I would urge you not to buy those cashew cheeses and not to support the use of those. And we really need to, again, think fair trade, organic, if you're eating cashews. I mean, cashews are quite inflammatory anyway for a lot of people. Luckily, I've always had ulcers in my mouth if I ever ate even one. And this is a whole great YouTube watch for anyone who's interested to know about the dark side of the cashews and all about what's happening in India to the farmers. It's very shocking. Some of the negative impacts of that pesticide is neurotoxins, late sexual maturity, physical deformity, poisoning, and there are others. Over 20 years of aerial spraying on cashew plantations in Kerala and other states has left many with mental and physical disorders. So, I urge you to just really think, like I keep saying, move away from foods that are, being flown in from all over the world, where workers have very poor conditions and are getting paid very little, and then are having these side effects which are not even discussed. And again, she said this is a very environmentally friendly product. Now, I don't know if she didn't do her due diligence, but if she had done her due diligence and saw that that's what was happening to those farmers, surely she would not have created a cheese product using cashews. She would have found another source. I mean, cashews are used I ate raw food way back in the day for a whole year, when I thought, yeah, I found my answer to the whole world, high on raw food, which was like raw, vegan raw. And cashew was in all the sauces. Everything that looked like a cream sauce or cakes was cashew based. I could actually even still smell it. Anyway, that's by the by, and that's another point. So what have we learned from this whole show? Well, yes, we did expect the vegans to have a lower LDL. We did, because they weren't eating any saturated fat. We did expect them to have lower TMO, which was a fact. We would have expected them to lose weight because they were eating less calories than the actual omnivores. And it was interesting because the omnivores and the vegans were both had to eat 6 servings of grains. Now, an omnivore does not need to eat 6 servings of grains in the day. That's kind of ridiculous. And there was no discussion about how much sugar either of the groups ate, but it was clear that the vegans ate less than the omnivores. So you would expect a bigger drop overall in body weight. They had a lower body fat, the vegans, but they did lose muscle mass. So they lost weight, but they lost muscle mass, and there was up to about 2 pounds in some cases. So what we do know is low muscle strength elevates your risk of all-cause mortality, regardless of muscle mass, metabolic syndrome, sedentary time. So regardless of all of those, low muscle strength elevates your risk of all-cause mortality. And I felt on this show there wasn't enough emphasis on lifting weights. And in fact, the girl who was doing the DEXA scan, she said to one of the overweight twins, "Oh, you'd really beneficial from cardio." And I was thinking, okay, well, you maybe actually now planted that seed, and that's all she wants to do is kill herself on cardio. And in fact, in that one set of twins, I think that she said it to, they didn't put on that much muscle. There wasn't the emphasis on really building muscle to increase your metabolism, to burn calories when you're at rest. And, you know, that's key to training. As a personal trainer, I've been a personal trainer. There was no emphasis on that. And, you know, also the 2 of the couples who were vegans, one of the men and one of the girls, the 2 vegans didn't really do that much strength training. Now, that could have been circumstances, or was that because they had less motivation because they were eating a vegan diet? It would have been interesting to actually kind of figure that out. I'm not making any assumptions. I don't know. I do know that one of the twin boys, who they love cheese, they were fabulous. He was moving house and he had got other stuff going on. So all of those factors do play into the overall results. And that's why, you know, anything to do with diet and nutrition as a research is very hard to do. It's very hard to have it so that everything is replicated and exactly controlled and the same. But at the end of it, these were the two pictures I took, because I thought, what did they learn from the study? And, you know, this was one of the twins and she was fabulous. But this was her plate. At the end of the 6 months later, this was her plate. I mean, it's a brown plate, it's a vegan plate, but there is hardly anything fresh on it. It's got deep fried, those vegan spring rolls, and there's several of those on. And it just, to me, just looks like, oh my God, that looks like death on a plate to me. It doesn't look like a vibrant, fresh plate. So I kind of think, what did they learn from this? You know, was their takeaway, you should never eat red meat, you should only eat chicken and fish, which really, you know, in my eyes is not the healthiest option. You know, that the Beyond Meats are better than animal-based products, which is not true. They didn't learn anything about ultra-processed oils. They didn't learn the importance of protein and your macronutrient ratio, that actually you don't need to have 6 servings of grains on your plate throughout the day, for the whole day. You know, you can actually have sweet potato, you can have turnip. There's lots of other options, which actually brings down the GI, the glycemic index of that food, or of that plate, which is really important, that those are the messages that we're delivering to the public, and that we're not confusing them, and that we're not creating this whole war between the animal-based people and the vegan people. We should respect everybody's choices, and we should be promoting health for everyone. That should be our goal. So at the end of all of this, I've done a lot of talking. I just quickly wanted to go through all of these to highlight that everybody in this show, there was an agenda. The agenda was to promote a vegan diet and a vegan lifestyle using the Beyond Foods and the Impossible Burgers, which, as we know, is a huge, huge industry now. And there's lots of money to be made out of it. There's the famous Dr. McGregor, who is research advisory of the Vegan Society. Please really cross-check everything he says. He's very inflammatory. He speaks a lot of nonsense and doesn't base it on science. This is Christopher Gardner, who is the American nutrition researcher. He's a vegan. He works at Stanford. His wife's a vegan. His kids are vegan. So he had his own agenda here. Mayoki Shinner, who is the founder of the cheese company, met with the Cashews. It was worth $260 million, and now she's no longer CEO. She's probably sold it off to another company, but it has her name. Founder, then this is Louis Fiosi, who was the producer. He's founder of Oceanic Preservation Society, and that's a good thing, because obviously we want to encourage going back to traditional styles of fishing and stop overfishing, and protect the wildlife species and move away from farming salmon, which I love that part, actually, to show you how disgusting that is. And in the UK you really can't find fresh wild salmon. You just can't get it, and I don't eat it. Ever since I left Canada, I really haven't had wild salmon because you can't get it. And I'm not a fan of farm salmon. Even if it's organic, I think we should stay away from it, because it does have a disease, the disease actually is now affecting the wild salmon, which is a big problem, and it can affect our health. It's like a leukemia of the blood, they say when they describe it. I have forgotten, it was a long time ago when I actually talked to my class in Canada about that, all you guys. Then the study was funded by the Vote Foundation, which Kyle Vogt is the president. He supports the Ocean Preserve Society, which is a great thing, as I say, but he also is a vegan. So there is there's a very strong vegan push here, and it was, I don't think, it missed the point if we're looking at cardiometabolic diseases, which, if we go back to the very beginning of what this show was about, or the paper was about, the cardiometabolic effect of omnivore versus vegan diet. And really, if we were looking at the facts, we would have said ultra processed food and seed oils, we need to be removing those. We need to be looking at the gut-heart axis. We need to be moving away from these foods like Beyond Meat foods and Impossible Burgers, and we need to be eating fresh, whole plant-based foods and fresh, whole omnivorous foods. And that's kind of where I want to leave this. And hopefully, if you like this video, you can like and subscribe and pass some comments, because comments are really useful for me as feedback. And you can let me know what you thought of this. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want me to do some more on different topics, I'd love it. You just to let me know what you want to discuss. I can do them in this format if you liked it. Have a fabulous weekend. Ciao. Lots of love to everyone. Bye. Finish, Mark. I hope it's done.